All right, get ready for a deep dive today. We're going to be tackling some seriously fascinating concepts, shadow work, and embracing duality. You've sent over a ton of material on self-discovery and spiritual growth, so it seems like you're ready to explore some hidden corners of yourself.
It's clear that you're really curious about this. What I find really interesting is this emphasis on integrating the so-called negative
Yeah.
aspects of ourselves, not just chasing after, those like good vibes only ideals. There's some real depth to this, going way beyond just surface level self-improvement.
Totally. We've got these excerpts from this guide, Navigating Shadows, Embracing Duality for a Fulfilling Wholeness. And honestly, some of these concepts are pretty mind-blowing.
Definitely. It challenges a lot of that conventional wisdom about personal growth.
Right. So to start off, what exactly is shadow work? This guide describes it as confronting those parts of ourselves we tend to just hide away. Our fears, negative emotions, even those desires we think are just like unacceptable.
It's like acknowledging that we're not just our highlight reel. You know, we're this complex mix of light and shadow,
Right.
and real personal growth comes from integrating both. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist,
Oh.
he called this hidden part of ourselves the shadow. He believed it holds this incredible potential for growth if we can learn to embrace it.
Yeah, the guide lists repressed emotions, hidden desires, primitive impulses, even things like cognitive blind spots as all components of the shadow. I mean, I definitely have a few of those lurking around. I bet you've encountered your own shadows too, listener.
Oh, we all have.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that these shadow aspects aren't inherently bad, though. They become problematic when we just deny them or suppress them. That's when they can manifest in these really unhealthy ways.
Like how?
Well, think about projection.
Yeah.
Do you ever notice how we often criticize in others the very qualities we don't like in ourselves? That's projection in action, our shadows trying to get our attention. Or think about emotional outbursts, defensive behavior. Those can often come from unacknowledged shadow aspects.
Wow, that makes so much sense. This guide even suggests that facing our shadow head-on can actually boost our confidence and creativity. That seems a little counterintuitive at first.
It does, doesn't it? But imagine just constantly using all your energy to hide parts of yourself. That's exhausting. By accepting our shadow, we free up all that energy. We can focus on the things that actually matter to us. And by acknowledging our flaws, we become more self-aware. That self-awareness is like a superpower for growth.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal of this shadow work. But what about those who say it makes us too introspective, too focused on all the negative?
That's a valid concern, but I think it's based on a misunderstanding. Shadow work isn't about dwelling in negativity. It's about understanding it and integrating it so we can live more fully and authentically. It's about recognizing that our shadow has these valuable lessons and insights, even if they're uncomfortable at first.
No, it's not about eliminating our shadow, it's about like
Yeah.
befriending it.
Exactly. It's about accepting the full spectrum of who we are and harnessing the power of those hidden aspects for growth and transformation. And there's another aspect to this. The source also highlights how accepting ourselves more fully also spills over into our relationships.
Tell me more about that.
Well, think about it. The more comfortable we are with our own complexity, the less likely we are to judge others. We start to see the world through a more compassionate lens, understanding that everyone is grappling with their own shadows.
So shadow work isn't just about individual growth. It's about creating more understanding and authentic connections with the people around us.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing our shared humanity even when we have these differences.
All right, I'm sold on the benefits, but how do we actually do this shadow work? It seems kind of daunting.
It is. It's definitely a journey, not a quick fix. The source suggests a process of self-reflection, identifying triggers, embracing vulnerability, and ultimately integration and acceptance.
It seems like a lot of deep inner work. What are some of the tools or techniques that are helpful in that process?
Well, there are a lot of different paths you can explore. Journaling is a really powerful tool for self-reflection. It helps us get our thoughts and feelings out there and start to identify patterns and triggers. Meditation can be incredibly valuable for just cultivating self-awareness and learning to just observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment. And then therapy, of course, can provide expert guidance and support, especially if you're dealing with past trauma or some really deeply ingrained patterns.
It sounds like the key is to just approach this with a sense of curiosity and self-compassion.
Yeah, you got it. It's not about judging ourselves or trying to force change. It's about gently uncovering and understanding those hidden parts of ourselves with a sense of kindness and acceptance.
I'm curious, have you found any specific techniques to be particularly helpful in your own exploration of your shadow?
For me, dream analysis has been really insightful. It's amazing how much our dreams can reveal about our unconscious thoughts and feelings.
That's fascinating. Maybe we can explore that a little more in a bit. But first, the source also delves into this whole concept of duality and spirituality. What is that all about?
It's this idea that these opposing forces like joy and sorrow, light and shadow, aren't actually opposites at all. They're two sides of the same coin, integral to our experience as human beings.
So it's about accepting that life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, that darkness is part of the equation too.
Exactly. And that wholeness doesn't mean eliminating the negative, but embracing both the light and the dark. This concept is echoed in a lot of different spiritual traditions. It's about recognizing that you can't have one without the other.
Interesting. So, how do we start to embrace this duality? It seems like a pretty radical shift from how we're often taught to think about life.
It is a shift, isn't it? We're often conditioned to just strive for happiness and avoid pain, to seek the light and reject the darkness. But embracing duality invites us to see things differently, to find beauty and wisdom in both.
That's a really compelling idea, but I gotta admit, it is a bit challenging to wrap my head around. How can we practically apply this concept of duality in our everyday lives?
I think the first step is just becoming aware of it. Start noticing how these opposing forces show up in your own life, in your relationships, in the world around you.
So, like noticing how moments of intense joy can sometimes be followed by feelings of sadness, or how a creative breakthrough can emerge from like a period of intense struggle.
Exactly. Or even just in nature. Observing the cycle of day and night, the changing seasons, the constant interplay of creation and destruction. It's everywhere once you start looking for it.
I'm starting to see it. It's like this hidden pattern woven into the fabric of existence.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And once we start to recognize this pattern, we can begin to appreciate its beauty and wisdom.
This reminds me of something the source mentioned that faith and doubt often coexist, just like joy and sorrow. It's like those two sides are always in conversation with each other.
That's such a key insight. It's not about eliminating doubt or trying to force ourselves to feel only joy. It's about recognizing that these opposing forces are both part of the human experience. They can actually complement and inform each other.
It's like each side holds a piece of the puzzle, and we need both to see the full picture.
Precisely. Embracing duality means accepting that life is full of paradoxes and contradictions. It's about holding space for the full spectrum of experience without judgment or resistance.
This is resonating so much with me, but I have to ask, how do we even begin to hold space for all of that? Especially when those darker emotions, those shadow aspects, can feel so intense and overwhelming.
It's definitely a process, and it requires a lot of self-compassion. Remember, we're not aiming for perfection here, but progress.
Right, it's a journey. Earlier you mentioned dream analysis as a technique for shadow work. I'm curious to hear more about how that works.
Well, dreams can be such a rich source of information about our unconscious minds. They often use symbolism and metaphors to communicate with us, and those symbols can hold clues about our shadow aspects.
So those weird, nonsensical dreams I have might actually be trying to tell me something.
Absolutely. A recurring dream, a particularly vivid dream, a dream that leaves you feeling unsettled. Those are all worth exploring. The source suggests keeping a dream journal where you write down your dreams as soon as you wake up. Then you can start to look for patterns, recurring symbols, and emotional themes.
And how do we connect those dream symbols to our shadow?
Well, there are a lot of resources available to help you interpret dream symbols, but ultimately the most important thing is to just pay attention to your own intuition and how the symbols make you feel. For example, if you repeatedly dream about being chased, that could be a symbol of something you're avoiding in your waking life. Perhaps a shadow aspect you're afraid to face.
That's amazing. I'm definitely going to start paying more attention to my dreams. But what if journaling and dream analysis aren't your thing? Are there other ways to engage in shadow work?
Absolutely. The guide also emphasizes the power of creative expression. Activities like writing, painting, dancing, even singing can help us tap into our unconscious and give voice to our shadow.
So it's like channeling those hidden emotions and thoughts into a creative outlet.
Exactly. And the beauty of creative expression is that it doesn't require any special skills or training. It's simply about allowing yourself to explore and express whatever comes up without judgment or censorship.
That makes so much sense. It's like giving ourselves permission to play and explore without any pressure to create a masterpiece.
Exactly. And you might be surprised by what emerges.
It seems like this whole process of shadow work is about getting to know ourselves on a much deeper level accepting the parts we've been hiding from and ultimately integrating them into a more whole and authentic self.
Beautifully said. And that journey in self-discovery is intimately intertwined with this idea of embracing duality.
So the more we explore our shadow, the more we understand the dance of light and dark within us, and the closer we get to that sense of wholeness that the Source talks about.
That's the idea. It's not about striving for some idealized version of ourselves where we've eliminated all our flaws. It's about embracing the full spectrum of who we are, shadow and light, and recognizing that both are essential to our growth and evolution.
It's a beautiful and powerful concept, but the Source takes it even further, doesn't it? It talks about transcending duality altogether and experiencing a sense of oneness with the universe. Now that sounds pretty mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing. And for many, it represents the ultimate goal of spiritual exploration.
So what exactly does it mean to transcend duality, and how is it even possible?
Well, the Source describes it as moving beyond the illusion of separateness and recognizing our interconnectedness with all things.
It's like we're all part of one big cosmic web, right?
Exactly. It's about shifting from an I versus them mentality to a sense of we are all one.
That's a pretty radical shift in perspective. How do we even begin to wrap our heads around that?
It's definitely a journey, and it often involves years of spiritual practice and self-exploration. But the Source suggests that we can start by simply cultivating awareness of our interconnectedness in everyday life.
What does that look like practically?
It can be as simple as noticing the interconnectedness of all living things, recognizing that we are all part of the same ecosystem.
Or it can be about practicing compassion and kindness towards others, seeing them as reflections of ourselves.
So it's about looking for those moments of connection, those glimpses of unity in the midst of our everyday lives.
Exactly. And the more we cultivate that awareness, the more we begin to see the world through a different lens.
It's like we're expanding our consciousness to encompass a wider perspective, one that includes not just ourselves, but the entire universe.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And that expanded consciousness can lead to a profound sense of peace, purpose, and belonging.
I can see why this concept has captivated spiritual seekers for centuries. It speaks to something deep within us, a longing for connection, for wholeness, for something beyond the limitations of our individual selves. It does, doesn't it? And while the path to transcending duality can be challenging, the rewards are immense.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. What's resonating most strongly with you, listener? Are you intrigued by this concept of shadow work? Curious about exploring duality in your own life? Or maybe even drawn to the idea of transcending those perceived opposites?
It's clear from the material you've shared that you're interested in self-discovery and spiritual growth. Embracing shadow work and the concept of duality can be transformative, but it's a journey that requires courage and self-compassion.
Here's something to ponder as you continue your exploration. The Source suggests we ask ourselves, what am I, or who am I, throughout the day? Notice how your answer changes depending on the context, your mood, or even the people you're with. What does that reveal about the fluid nature of self? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep embracing the fullness of who you are. Happy shadow work.
Yeah, it really is mind-blowing to think about, isn't it? This idea of like transcending duality, of merging with something bigger than ourselves. It almost feels like we're like venturing into the realm of mystics and gurus and all that.
It can definitely feel that way. And to be honest, there's a bit of mystery to it. But what's fascinating is that the Source also offers some practical ways to start exploring this concept,
Yeah.
even without, retreating to a mountaintop for years of solitary meditation.
Yeah, what struck me was the emphasis on practices like mindfulness and connecting with nature. Those seem a lot more accessible than I imagined at first. They really are. Think about those moments when you're just completely absorbed in the beauty of a sunset or lost in the rhythm of your breath during meditation. Don't those experiences kind of give you like a taste of that sense of oneness? Like a dissolving of the boundaries between you and the world around you?
They totally do. It's like you're tapping into something deeper, a sense
Yeah.
of interconnectedness that goes beyond our usual perception of reality.
Exactly. And those moments can be incredibly powerful. They can shift our perspective, open our hearts, and help us see the world with fresh eyes. The Source even suggests that we can cultivate a sense of oneness through acts of compassion and kindness.
That makes sense. When we're focused on helping others, on extending ourselves beyond our own ego, it's natural to feel a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Right. It's like those acts of love and compassion are like threads weaving us into that cosmic web you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And it's not just about these grand gestures either. It could be as simple as a kind word, a listening ear, a helping hand.
So it's about bringing that awareness of interconnectedness into our everyday interactions.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together. We're all part of the same human family, even when we disagree or have different perspectives.
The source even suggests this really interesting exercise for cultivating this awareness. It encourages us to ask ourselves throughout the day, what am I? Or who am I? And to notice how our answer changes depending on the context, our mood, or even the people we're with.
That's a powerful practice. It helps us see that our sense of self isn't fixed or solid, but rather fluid and constantly evolving. It also encourages us to be more present and aware of the different roles we play in life.
It's like we're constantly shifting and changing like the tides or the seasons.
Exactly. And embracing that fluidity can be incredibly liberating. It allows us to let go of rigid definitions of ourselves and open up to the possibility of growth and transformation.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from exploring the hidden depths of our shadow selves to embracing the dance of duality and even venturing into the realm of transcendence. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And it's a journey that you, listener, have already begun just by engaging with these ideas and exploring these materials.
You've clearly got a thirst for knowledge and a willingness to dive deep into the mysteries of self and spirit.
And remember, it's a lifelong journey. There's no rush, no pressure to achieve some ultimate state of enlightenment or anything like that. The real magic lies in the process of exploration, in the continual unfolding of self-discovery.
So keep asking those big questions, keep challenging your assumptions, and keep embracing the fullness of who you are. Shadow and light, darkness and light, all the beautiful contradictions that make you uniquely you.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Connect with others who are on a similar path. Seek out teachers and mentors and find practices that resonate with your soul.
This deep dive has given you a taste of some really profound concepts, but ultimately it's up to you to continue the exploration.
Trust your intuition, listen to your heart, and allow yourself to be guided by the wisdom that resides within you.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into shadow work, embracing duality, and the possibility of transcendence.
Keep exploring, keep growing, and keep shining your light.